מזמור לדוד. אדוני רואי לא יחסר, בנוטש ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני במגלי צדק, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא ירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. תשענת בשם ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
As Cantor Schiffman began our service by chanting the words of Psalm 23 in the Hebrew, please join with me, Psalm 23 in the English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Today is an incredibly difficult day. To say goodbye to an incredible man, so young, taken from us. And yet, as we gather, there is so much incredible love. Love for him and the love that he gave to each and every one of us. And so today we are obligated to take time to celebrate all that he taught us, all that he gave to us. And so with that, today we recall with great affection Dr. Marc A. Slomovitz, a loving son, a loving brother, a loving husband, a loving father, a loving uncle, a loving nephew, a loving cousin, a loving doctor, and a loving friend. Every single year we read our Torah, and we rejoice at its ending, its Simchas Torah, even though its final section details the death of our leader, Moses. Upon its completion, we joyously return to the beginning and start to read the Torah from its opening. Judaism teaches that our lives are like a book. Our actions and words are recorded. We must especially talk about this week between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. This week, Marc's book was finished. The family gathered by his bedside. So difficult to say goodbye. And yet, Marc's legacy will continue to grow as we live the values that he lived and taught us. The rabbis imagine Moses crying while writing the final chapters of the Torah telling of his death. And so it is for all of us today. Though his last days are sealed with our tears, we must rejoice, for we now have the opportunity to share his story from the beginning. Marc's story is filled with blessings and love, an adoring wife, his true best friend and bashert, his sons, a devoted father who lived for his boys, a selfless man who put his family as his top priority. Marc has departed from this world, as I said, at too young an age, just 55 years old. He leaves behind in mourning his beloved wife, partner, and best friend, Sheila, his sons, his boys, now men, Tyler, Eric, and Landon, his sister, Michelle and Michael, brother-in-law, Andy and Nina, father-in-law, Henrik, nieces and nephews, Eileen and Drew, Austin and Jenna, Elon, Chad, Evan, Justin, Danielle, Zachary, and Kylie, beloved aunts and uncles, cousins, and friends. Marc now joins his parents of blessed memory, Edith and Sam, his brother Lawrence. He joins them all in their eternal home in heaven. There are several tributes this morning from family and close friends. I'd first like to call up best friends of the family, Renee and Debbie.
I want to start by saying how awfully difficult this is. So please forgive me if I tear up or otherwise stutter over my words. Marc, my dear friend, my confidant, my family. I have known Marc for almost 30 years, and I consider myself very blessed to have been part of his life. Marc and I met in 1989 when I started working at Miller Drug Store with Sheila. Shortly after I started working at Miller Drug, Sheila became pregnant with Tyler. Oh, I wanted kids so badly. So 9 months later, I relished in the fact that I was able to babysit whenever and wherever I wanted to. That baby was cute, and Marc knew it. He couldn't stop kissing and hugging him. Marc was always so welcoming, so kind when I came over to his house. He was the perfect husband, perfect friend, perfect father. Man, did he love his family. He did absolutely anything and everything for Sheila. She was his princess, the love of his life. Then along came Eric, otherwise known as Ricky Cardo. Sorry, Eric. Eric was a mini Marc. Oh, Marc loved that kid. And he was tough on him. I think it was probably because when he looked at Eric, he saw himself and only wanted the very best for his son. I was lucky to partake in a lot of fun activities with Marc and his young family. Myrtle Beach, I could still hear him yelling at me as I quietly drifted out on my raft during a shark sighting. Mohican, I really wish he knew how to paddle a raft. It was no fun running into a tree. Baseball games. I have watched everyone in this family play ball for what feels like forever. I'm sure you could imagine how unathletic I feel. Vegas and Blueberry Hill. Oh, those pancakes were delish. And most memorable, our Friday night Chinese or gyro runs. 2 foods, mind you, I had never tried until I met Sheila and Marc at 19 years old. What happened next changed my life. 3 years after Eric was born, Sheila became pregnant with Landon. At this point, my wanting kids became a longing. And when Landon was born, Marc and Sheila, they shared that kid with me. All the kids. That Landon, otherwise known as Bone, it's a long story, sure gave us a run for our money in high school. We would all bang our heads together trying to help this kid get serious about school. From my perspective, when I stepped away from homework duty and let Marc and Landon battle it out, this is when their relationship blossomed into a friendship. Marc would always tell me what a wonderful kid Landon is and what a big heart he has. Up until his dying day, that kid didn't leave his side. Yes, Landon has made us all very proud. Thanks again, Landon, from Dad and I for all those late, painful nights.
PNC corporate dude. I thank Mark and Sheila, and I thank God for my everlasting relationship with these kids. They mean the world to me. Classy, cream of the crop people. I look so forward to spending the rest of my life looking after them, watching them grow and build lives of their own. Look at these boys. Mark, look at these boys. They are the result of your impeccable parenting, your selflessness, and your endless dedication. Mark, here's to a caring and compassionate husband, an unbelievable father, and a wonderful friend. Thank you for all the good years. They were some of the best in my life. I love you. Oh, God. Okay. Those of you that know Slomovitz family well are aware of how close I am with all of them. Mark was truly one of my best friends. He always made me feel like I mattered and was always right there for me. If I were asked to describe Mark, the first thing that comes to my mind is that he was one of the most thoughtful, caring people I've ever met. He always put others before himself. He loved to make others happy. If one day I mentioned that I had a craving for Mike and Ike's, I'm a candy-holic, the next time I'd be at their house, there'd be a big box of Mike and Ike's right there for me. If I were at their house and it was snowing outside, I'd come outside when I was ready to leave, and my car would be all wiped off, and it would be turned around so I didn't have to back out of his driveway and accidentally go over his grass like I did every year. That never went over too well. Mark used to love playing 2 games with me. He would ask me to quiz him on the prices in the Marks or the Giant Eagle flyer. Orange juice, it's on sale for how much? Canned mushrooms, 2 for how much? He'd get all happy if he actually got the price right or close to it. The other game Mark loved with playing was Name That Tune. I'd say 70s songs, and I'd turn on my Apple Music, and I'd play a Foreigner song. He'd yell, "Hot-blooded," or whatever song it was. I could always get him singing if I played Neil Diamond, Sweet Caroline, or The Jazz Singer, or his favorite, Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA. He'd sing along or whistle through his teeth. Besides being a sports fanatic, a wonderful husband to Sheila, and such a good dad to his boys, Mark was also like a clean nut. He loved his home, and he loved all his stuff. He kept it all perfect. Nothing would make him crazier when he'd come into the kitchen and see my fingerprints all over his refrigerator, or if my rings scratched the refrigerator, the handle. Needless to say, he wasn't happy when I'd spill sticky lemonade on the kitchen floor, or the time I broke a plate. Thinking back, it makes me smile. I can hear in my head, "R, what are you doing? Just stop." Mark, I will miss you so much. You will always mean so much to me. With you goes a piece of my heart. Thank you for being such a good friend to me, being there for my grandma, my boys. On a lighter note, Mark, I will probably run over your grass again this winter. So I'm apologizing in advance.
Now we'll call up childhood friend John DeJulius. John DeJulius.
You see a common theme here. Where to start? Marc Slomovitz. Many of you know him as Mark. Some of you know him as Slom or Slomo. Others knew him as Jabba, Captain Naked, Doc, Coach, or Dad. I've known Mark since we were little kids. We played baseball against each other in Little League. And I didn't like him too much because he was really good. Then we became teammates. I started to like him. But I have a confession to make. One of the initial reasons why I started hanging out with Mark was because of his size. When we met, he was massive. He was lifting weights every day at the YMCA with his brother Larry. And Mark was huge. They were both huge. And my group of friends at the time were really small and skinny. I was the biggest of my friends. So, however, we had big mouths. So we got in trouble. We got in fights a lot. So when I met Mark, I was so happy. I was like, no one's going to mess with me now. So one Friday night while in high school, Mark and I went to the South Euclid McDonald's to hang out. And Mark drove his first love, his Trans Am, his coveted Trans Am. So as we were hanging out in the parking lot near Mark's car, a big kid who I didn't have a good history with came over, literally picks me up, and slams me on the hood of Mark's car. And all I thought to myself was, now you're in trouble, buddy. And then Mark starts tapping him on the shoulder. Excuse me. Excuse me. And I'm like, that's it? To further demonstrate where the toughness in the Slomovitz family comes from, when the kids were very young, Mark and Sheila took them to Myrtle Beach. And on the last day, just before they were about to drive home, Sheila broke her right foot in 2 different places boogie boarding. However, Sheila wanted to wait till they got back to Cleveland to get it put in a cast. A few hours into the drive, Mark wakes Sheila up and says he can't see well into the dark, and she needed to drive. And Sheila drove the rest of the way home on a broken right foot. So even though Mark wasn't the muscle I was hoping for, we instantly became close friends, a friendship which has been one of the most rewarding and meaningful relationships I've ever had in my life. And I have to admit, when Mark started dating Sheila, I had a hard time with it because I was jealous. But how do you not fall in love with Sheila? Individually, they are great people. But together, as a team, they created such a positive energy, a vibe that was so infectious to be around. As many of you know, Mark had this wonderful ability to make you feel special. And sometimes, like old friends, we wouldn't talk for a while. And out of nowhere, my phone would ring and I'd answer, and on the other end I'd hear, which was his Captain Naked, call sign. Or he'd say, dude. And then we would just talk for 20 minutes as if we were 17, laughing, being immature. I never understood how Mark was a doctor. But I'd hang up and just have a grin from ear to ear. He always energized me. So naturally, these past few months, I've been talking a lot about Mark. And it is impossible to describe Mark accurately to people that never met him. When I tried, I would tell him he's this big, goofy, caring, hilarious, silly, selfless, nurturing teddy bear that doesn't take himself or anything too seriously. His personality was so refreshing to be around. Boy, was Mark passionate. If Mark was into something, he loved it. Like he loved his cars. He loved baseball. He loved coaching. His first stint as a coach was coaching Sheila's softball team when they first got married. And he drove her crazy. He was obsessed. And I honestly believe that is why they started having kids. So he would leave Sheila alone and start coaching Tyler. He coached all three of his boys in baseball and football. And as it was pointed out by Renee, how he loved to clean and his obsession about cleaning. No one could clean up because they couldn't do it the way he did. He loved shoveling the snow constantly, all hours of the day in Mark. And Mark loved to show you pictures on his phone. He was telling me recently about Landon's pitching and how awesome he is. And he says, hold on, I got to show you this video. And, he couldn't find it, and it was taking a while. I'm like, Mark, I get it. I he's great. He's like, no. You got to see it. And he just, looked and found it, but, everything was he had to show you. He loved his phone. He was so proud. But all the things Mark loved, he was passionate about. He loved Sheila, Tyler, Eric, and Landon the most. That was obvious. He was so proud of each of them and loved to talk about them. Listening to him brag about each and watching the way he interacted with each of them, silly, funny, and each of their best friends, was so inspiring. I loved to be around the Slomovitz family. Every time I left their house, it made me want to be a better spouse and a better father. I have complete confidence that Mark's sense of humor isn't gone and will remain. About 6 weeks ago, I came over the house to hang out with Mark on a Sunday while Sheila and the boys went to the Indians game. And about halfway through the game, Sheila texted me asking me how Mark was doing. And I sent her a picture of him sleeping. He fell asleep in his chair while watching the game. And all of a sudden, my phone started blowing up from Landon and Eric telling me that there's magic markers in the kitchen drawer and to draw all over his face. Begging me to draw all over his face. So I did. I believe the best evidence of a life we live is how well our kids turn out. Sheila and Mark, you've done the most amazing job raising three of the most impressive, genuine, caring men I've ever met. What can we all learn from the way Mark lived his life? To enjoy life, to be passionate about stuff, not to be afraid to show it. Stop taking ourselves and life so seriously, to always be there for our friends, to be a loving and caring husband, to be more selfless and do for others without expecting anything in return, to spend time with our kids and be their best friends, to laugh and make people laugh. I'm going to miss Mark so much. So hard to believe I'm not going to see him or ever talk to him again. However, I take great comfort in knowing every time I'm around his three boys, which I plan on being a lot, it will be like spending time with Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Our final tribute is from Andy Sperling, Mark's brother in love.
I guess Mark would call me the closer today. This has been obviously very, very hard on all of us. You know, as a working for a Rite Aid in corporate, I did a lot of speaking. I had teleprompters, PowerPoints, and I had notes. I don't have any of those today, and I want to keep this short and to the point. Mark, I can't describe what Mark has meant to me. Well, I'll tell you a couple of stories that have touched me and will touch me for the rest of my life. Being a big Cleveland sports fan, even though I don't live in Cleveland, I would follow the Indians, the Browns, Cavaliers, and any Cleveland sports that I could. And when finally Cleveland had a championship a couple years ago in the Cavaliers, the first phone call I got was from Mark. And Mark said, "Andy," I said, "What?" He goes, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. There's a cap, a championship cap. Nobody can get it. Everybody's sold out. I'm getting you one." And he did. Not only that, he said, "I'm going to get you a copy of the Plain Dealer." Again, where I live, there's no Plain Dealer. And I think it was all sold out, if I'm not mistaken, the next day. And sure enough, there's a copy of the Plain Dealer for me. On my 60th birthday, don't laugh, on my 60th birthday, being an Ohio State person myself and going to school there, he got me a limited edition jersey. And as soon as I got that, I had to send a picture, or he wanted to see it on me. And again, that's just something that he would do. I don't think he had a second thought about it. He just went and did it. Lastly, when I moved to Kentucky, he wanted me to FaceTime him so he can see my house. We moved to Charleston, South Carolina. I hope I have a house when I get back. But when we moved to Charleston, South Carolina, again, FaceTime, I want to see what your house looks like. It was always somebody else and not him. It's just an amazing guy. The only story I want to share with you is, mentioned before, was Mark being the neat freak. So every Passover, it's traditional that Sheila would have a second Seder at her house. And she would cook all day long, and Mark would clean all day long right behind her, take away the dishes as she was actually kneading them. You know, there's probably food in them as well. But anyway, we would have the big Seder dinner, go through the whole Passover ritual, and Mark would get up afterwards and he would clean the dishes. And I felt really, really bad for him. Like, that's a lot of dishes, there's a lot of people. So I nervously asked him, "Can I help you?" And he kind of stepped back and looked at me, didn't say a word and I thought, am I able to help him? So he said, and I think reluctantly he said, "Okay." So I was happy, so I went in the kitchen, and he and I would just talk back and forth the whole time while we were cleaning the thousands of dishes, it seemed like, making sure the wine cups were lined up right, the silverware was lined up right, the big plates with the big plates, the little plates with the little plates, the bowls, whatever. We got done, we went back in, and Sheila served dessert, blah, blah, blah. Didn't hear a word from him. So I didn't know if I felt I was in the minor leagues, and I wanted to step up to be in the major league. I never got a word from him. The next year, same thing happened again. We had, Passover Seder at my sister's. And Mark looked at me and he said, "I got some dish towels for you to clean, help me clean." So I knew I made the majors at that time. I stepped up. But everybody described the words. And just a great, loving, caring person for everybody. And himself was always last. The last 2 weeks here, coming up here, have been very, very hard on me, seeing Mark in the condition that he was in and getting worse each and every day. I couldn't do enough for him. I couldn't think what to do for him. As we were there the night that he passed, everybody had said goodbye, and I went back in the room, and I said to him, "Mark, I will always take care of Sheila, Tyler, Eric, and Landon. You don't have to worry. I got this." And I told him I loved him. I will always miss him, and it'll be never a day that I don't think about him.
rabbis say, Devarim sheyotzim melev nechnasim belev. The words that come from the heart enter each one of our hearts, and most certainly those that offered tributes did that for us. He had a heart of gold, generous and thoughtful, sensitive and compassionate, soft-spoken and empathetic. He was a mensch, a gute neshama. He had a good soul. He lived life with zeal. He had Sitzfleisch, couldn't ever sit still. He was hardworking, devoted to his profession and his patients. He loved helping people. Family was number one, and he was so proud of you. He kfelled. He kfelled about all of you. And he and Sheila built their life around their boys, supporting, coaching, cheering on, football, baseball, studies, and life. Growing up on Okolona in South Euclid, Mark attended Roland, Greenview, and Brush. And as his sister Michelle told me, he was a good brother. Spoiled, of course, because he was the baby, but good. She remembers Shabbos mornings the most. On Saturdays, young Mark would wake her up early so that she could play with him. And you did, because you were a good sister. You remember your grandmother would come over and make her lumpy cream of wheat, which you still make as Mark did. And even as a boy, he was a neat freak. Michelle, you told me he'd clean out your drawers until he got smart enough to ask you to pay him. Mark graduated from John Carroll and then on to the Ohio School of Podiatric Medicine. It was at John Carroll where he met his beloved Sheila, his best friend, the love of his life. Sheila, of course, was studying Columbus at Ohio State, but was home for the summer, taking summer classes at John Carroll, where Mark was studying. You happened to have back-to-back classes from the same classroom. Sheila would walk out of the classroom, and Mark would walk in the classroom each day. You had known each other before, would talk a little bit at school, but then one night, Mark called your house. And this is the way Sheila tells the story. Mark called and said, Sheila, I have one extra ticket for Bruce Springsteen tomorrow night. Do you want it? Now, Sheila didn't say yes immediately. She put Mark on hold and went to discuss this with her mother because she didn't know. Was Mark asking her out on a date? Was he asking her to pay for her own ticket? He never made it clear. He didn't ask her out outright. Well, thankfully, Sheila said yes. She'll take the ticket, she said. Mark never made her pay in the end. It was most certainly a date. They were born to run together. You laugh about how when he'd call you at your house when you were dating, he wouldn't introduce himself on the phone. When your mom would pick up the phone, he wouldn't say, hello, Mrs. Sperling, is Sheila home? It's Mark calling. He'd just say, hey, is Sheila there? The family joke was that he was like Sylvester Stallone in Rocky. He'd call and just say, yo, Adrian, it's Rocky. Sheila, you told me that it was always so easy to be with Mark. So easygoing and kind. You shared so many of the same interests and passions. You loved cars, playing football in the back together, softball. Mark did everything to make you happy. It didn't matter what he wanted. It was always about making you happy. If he wanted Chinese and you wanted Italian, he'd say, you know, I really do have a taste for Italian tonight. Sheila, you told me he was your best friend. And since now the boys are older, you spent every night together just sitting on the couch, eating dinner, watching sports. You've already heard Mark was an amazing father to the boys. He was the enforcer and the disciplinarian when you were younger, but as you got older, he became your best buddy, your best friend. He was the family mediator. He only wanted peace in the house, shalom bayis. If something was wrong, you'd call Dad and he took care of it, and he would even cover it up from Mom. He taught you the most important things in life. For example, Saturdays started with temple, then it was homework, and then it was your football or baseball games. Dad always said, be a mensch, go to shul, do your work, and study. As you already heard, he didn't just go to your sports games, he coached your games from Pee Wee League all the way up. He was always there. Even if you weren't playing and you were injured, he was there just to see you and be with you. There wasn't anywhere Dad wouldn't go for you. His last sports trip was going down to Virginia for Landon's last Ohio State Club baseball tournament. He was always so proud. A beloved doctor, a well-respected podiatrist who worked at so many nursing homes, including Menorah Park, where he certainly didn't go for the money. He did it because he wanted to help people. He wanted people to feel better, to be more mobile, and to be active. He had his office in Beechwood, but would often make the house at the kitchen table his office and examination room. At home on the kitchen table, he'd be sanding people's feet, giving them injections. He was a great doc that could relate to you. He gave out his cell phone freely so that his patients could always be in touch with him, which is not that common. He was devoted to each and every one of his patients he cared for, and his patients gave him great kavod, great respect. He was, of course, a huge sports fan. His two favorite teams were the Buckeyes and the Indians. These last few months were extremely difficult, but there was also so much love. And the family rallied. You came together like you hadn't had in a long time. Mark's sister Michelle made all the special foods that their mom made growing up, Mama Liga and her blueberry crumble. All of you were there by Mark's side through it all. Mark said from the outset, I'm going to do everything that I can. He never complained, never asked you to feel sorry for him. He smiled and shared his passion and love with each of you. You worked on finishing all those little projects around the house, finishing bathrooms and the kitchen. He wanted to get the house set up for his Sheila, taking care of you always, and he did, except for the basement. And Sheila, you were his guardian angel, overseeing his care and his treatments, his primary caregiver, and his best friend. And it was so special having all the boys back at home here in Cleveland. Mark left this world on Rosh Hashanah, our New Year, a Yontif, a joyous holiday marked, of course, by apples and honey, by sweetness and the shofar's call. How could such a sweet man be taken from us on such a day? Our tradition says that only a truly righteous person, a tzaddik, dies on a holiday to show how truly special he was. I also think that it's as John taught us. On these 10 days of repentance, Aseret Yemei Tshuva, we are reminded about the most important things in life. Mark taught us that. He taught us the most important values, how to live a life, and we should remember those values. You should surely know how much Mark loved each of you, and I'm certain that he knew how much you loved him. We can surely say that he is no longer suffering. He's at peace. We believe that our souls are eternal. Even after our body dies, our soul lives on. And so we pray that the treasury of wonderful memories that Mark has left each one of us remain a strong and lasting influence throughout our lives. May his name always bring us blessings. Yehi Zichranu Baruch, and we say, Amen. We'll rise as Cantor Schiffman chants the memorial prayer.
El male rachamim, shochein bameromim, hametzei menucha nechona, tachad kanfei השכינה. במעלות קדוש הקדושים הטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת מאיר בן שמואל ויעקב, שהלך לעולמו. בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו. ענן בעל הרחמים, הסתירהו בסדק כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו. ונאמר amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of our beloved Mayor, the son of Shmuel and Yaakova, Dr. Marc Slomovitz, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May you merit the reward of the righteous. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. And we all say, Amen. Please be seated. Following the service, interment will be at Zion Memorial Park. And then the family will receive friends at their home, 3048 Old Brainerd Road in Pepper Pike, immediately following the burial until 8 o'clock this evening. Tomorrow, Friday, from 1 o'clock till 5 o'clock. Saturday, 7 to 9. Sunday, Monday, 1 to 4 and 7 to 9. And Tuesday, before Kol Nidre, from 1 to 4. We will be having evening minions at 7 p.m. tonight, Thursday, as well as Sunday night and Monday night at the home. Those who wish to contribute in Mark's memory may do so to any charity of choice.